Welcome to Knee Jerks, an ETA podcast on the Every.Thing.After Podcast network. I'm Rob, one of your hosts, and this is our show for nerding out and having some knee-jerk reactions to everything from movies and music to TV shows and games. In this episode, for Star Wars Month, my friend G and I watched a fan edit of Star Wars Episode 1, and we discussed whether it was an improvement on the original. Thanks for listening, and may the 4th be with you always.
We just watched Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the Cloak of Deception fan edit. Is that correct?
Yeah. This is the 8th version of the fan edit from fan editor Hal 9000, who apparently has done fan edits of all these movies, of all these Star Wars movies. So, yeah, we're kind of checking these out, getting a sense of what's changed, and our assessment on whether or not it's been an improvement. And gee, I think you're with me in that it's been quite a while since we've watched Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Yes.
Been many years. I think I watched it in theaters when it came out. I probably watched it once or twice after that, but I can't say that I've watched it in probably the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time for me as well. I've watched things adjacent to it, that have talked about it and things, but I've not watched the actual movie itself in a long time. Or, This isn't the actual movie itself, but you know what I mean? I haven't sat down to watch the thing as a whole, really.
Yeah. So we're not unlike other Star Wars fans in that we were pretty excited about the idea of this coming out when it came out. I remember, we were pretty psyched about the idea of it, right?
Oh yeah, I was super pumped. I collected all the pre-movie memorabilia they had from all the restaurants.
Yeah.
The soda cans and all that kind of stuff. So they've always had they had a lot of cool stuff leading up to the movie to get people hyped and focusing on the characters.
I had that poster. The poster with Jake Lloyd, the young Anakin as a boy on Tatooine, with the Vader shadow cast on the wall. I had that on my wall, my bedroom wall. I was pretty psyched about it. I remember too the other thing that kind of hyped it up for me. Remember Weird Al's song?
Yes.
His parody song.
Everyone
was pretty shocked at how closely he got it.
Mm-hmm.
And how closely the song actually matched the plot of that movie. And wasn't it just it's just a coincidence, right? He didn't see an early screening of it or anything, did he?
I think he did.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I think he did, because it's pretty much if you don't really want to watch the movie and want to know what happened, you could pretty much just listen to that song.
Right.
Like you could watch that show, then watch Attack of the Clones and not really be lost, I think, as long as you paid attention to the song. There's a funny story I have about that. We might have to cut it out, I'm not sure. But I used to go to what you would call a strip club in Florida. And that song had come out, and me and my friend was the DJ there, and that we were excited about that song because he was a big Star Wars fan too. And we paid one of the ladies that was there $20 a piece. This is 26 years ago, so that was actually a chunk of change back then. We paid her $20 a piece to dance to this song because we didn't think anybody would tip her, and we were just up there singing it in the DJ booth, we were just singing along with the song, and nobody tipped her or anything. So she was just looking around what the fuck.
Yeah.
But we got to
funny.
But we were drinking and having fun. We got to sing the song out loud to everybody, so it was fun. Like I said, we might cut that story. It's up to you.
No. I think that's pretty funny. I don't know. I get all kinds of weird Star Wars stuff shown to me. Like the algorithm thing picks out all kinds of weird, nerdy Star Wars stuff to show to me. I guess because I don't know. I mean, my browser history is probably chock full of stuff and like that, but I get the weirdest things sometimes. And one of the things there's apparently in Vegas some kind of risque Bordeaux or whatever parody show of Star Wars where it's
like a burlesque thing.
Yeah, burlesque, yeah, like scantily clad, like women, like dressed up like the Twi'lek and stuff like that,
I feel like I've
and
seen
wear
that before too.
the Hut Slayer Leia costume and stuff. We don't say
Yeah.
Slave Leia anymore. We say Hut Slayer Leia, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's some weird Star Wars stuff out there, man.
Yeah. Yeah. The fandom itself has kind of has grown to such a large extent that it covers pretty much everything now.
Yeah, yeah.
You can find a
Well,
Star Wars fan of any sort now that you'd like.
yeah. Yeah, and it's May, basically Star Wars month. I mean, we have Star Wars Day on May the 4th, but like there's just so much Star Wars stuff going on. We just might as well take the whole month for it, which is why we're doing some of this rewatch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be doing some other Star Wars themed uh, content. We're going to delve into the world of Fortnite with the new Star Wars skins that are coming out here in a couple days.
New Star Wars Battle Pass, actually.
I say delve in because I have not in my life played a round of Fortnite, and of course G here is a skilled pro at it,
Semi-pro,
and semi-pro, and he's gonna show me around, and we'll see how quickly I get murdered in that game.
it could be quick.
It'll be quick. I promise.
I get killed quickly myself, so
yeah.
The competition is fierce.
Every time we talk about it, I keep referencing that skit on SNL where it's like I think it's Mikey Day, and he's he's doing a game stream, and he's playing something like that. It might be Fortnite, maybe something else.
I think it was Fortnite.
And he and he drops in, and he like dies immediately, and he's like, oh, okay, and he's like, let's give this another try. Well, yeah. Like every time he drops in, like a second later, he's like murdered, and then I think it ends with him like trying to play like an old school like Mario Brothers or something, and he still just sucks at it.
I have Pac-Man Championship Edition with it. Have you ever seen that with the stage morphs while you're playing it?
No, I don't think so.
It's pretty funky. I've been wanting to play that on stream sometime, but I just haven't got around to it. I need to play more on stream.
I got a PlayStation. I'm getting back into gaming a little bit, but I can't promise that I'm going to be very good at Fortnite. I just have a feeling it's going to take a little while for me to pick that up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you that you won't be good at it for a while. It's nothing against you, trust me. It's just the way it works. Yeah. I'm still not that good at it. Like I said, I play a lot, so I know what I'm doing. I know I'm the savvy old veteran that knows the rules in the game world and stuff, and yeah, but I'm not the guy that comes in and frags everybody and does all that stuff. I have my moments, but I get by on a lot of old age and treachery. Like been there, done that kind of stuff.
We started this by talking, of course, about Star Wars month and our rewatches of the Star Wars movies, starting with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, a fan edit of that. They also just re-released in theaters Episode 3. It's like the 20th anniversary, I think, of Revenge of the Sith.
That's wild. I can't believe that. I remember going to see that in the theater, and it was just like, it feels like it was a couple of years ago, but 20.
Yeah.
I mean, Iron Man is almost 20 years old.
Wow.
Do you believe that? Which means Batman Begins is almost 20 years old, because I think those were the same summer, right?
Yeah. We're old.
No, it was The Dark Knight and Iron Man. So The Dark Knight is almost 20 years old. Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, Arrested Development came out 22 years ago.
Yeah.
I just went to the 20th anniversary of Windy City Heat 2 years ago. So.
Yeah, right. So I was pretty pleased, actually. I'm like, I like the fact that Star Wars fans are still filling theaters for a Star Wars movie 20 years later after its release. The prequels get a lot of flack for a lot of things, and some of it rightly so. But there's still a lot of fans of that. There are Star Wars fans who live and die by the prequels. that's their pinnacle of the saga. Those are the movies that came out when they were kids. Those are the movies that they grew up with. Whereas you and I grew up with, 4, 5, and 6, the original, the New Hope, and Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. But there's old generations that have grown up with the others, and apparently they filled the theaters for the anniversary. They were pretty full, and showed up excited. I saw a clip where Hayden Christensen, who played Anakin Skywalker, and Sam Jackson, who played Mace Windu, showed up at a screening and talked to the fans beforehand, before the show. People were pretty psyched to see that. I saw another clip where a couple of guys, as the credits rolled at the end, broke out some sabers and started doing a little Jedi duel in front of the screen. I'm glad to see that they did that after the movie. I think that there's a disturbing trend of moviegoers disrupting the movie with some of these type of antics. Like you've heard of all the stuff going on with the Minecraft movie, which I think is just ridiculous. If I was in a movie theater and something like that broke out, people throwing stuff and getting on each other's shoulders and doing the chicken jockey thing or whatever, like I would not be too pleased to be in a situation like that.
No, we're old people who don't like commotion going on after we've paid to sit down somewhere.
I want to watch the movie. I'm there to watch the movie. I'm not there to be entertained by your antics.
Yeah, if we're at an outdoor free screening or something and everybody's making noise anyway, have at it. But like if we all have to go pay to sit in there, man, chill out. Just chill.
Yeah.
But speaking of Star Wars month, we have a story about a Star Wars character, or a Star Wars actor at least. Do you remember when we met Dave Prowse in Canova, West Virginia?
Right. That's right, we did.
Yeah, that was pretty fun. I have an autographed Darth Vader figure somewhere still from Dave Prowse that day.
Yeah, I remember that. We talked to him.
We went to a comic book store that was probably for people who don't know where Canova is, you don't know where we lived anyway, so it's not like you know where that is in relation. But we went to a comic book store in Canova, West Virginia. It was like 45 minutes away or something. And Dave Prowse was there doing autograph signings and just chatting and hanging out with people. And there was maybe 20 people there tops.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole thing. Maybe, and they weren't all there at the same time either. There was we stayed there, I think, almost the whole time.
We had no trouble having access to him at all. It wasn't crowded. We didn't have to wait for a long time or anything like that. We just got to walk right up to him and talk to him. I remember that.
Yeah, there was no security guard. There was no nothing. He was just hanging out and chilling. It was really fun. It was one of my most memorable afternoons I think ever.
Yeah,
just chilling, hanging out with Darth Vader. Yeah, and if you don't know, Dave Prowse is the guy who wore the Darth Vader outfit and the costume and stuff. And he was also in A Clockwork Orange, I believe, right?
Yeah, he was. And I mean, he, of course, they filmed the first Star Wars with his voice as well, and then went back in and added James Earl Jones later. I mean,
he told us about that. He said that he did some of the lines, and he sounded really close, really similar. And he's like, I didn't even know it until I think he said his manager, his agent, or somebody told him the day that they premiered the movie that he wasn't the voice anymore. And he's like, oh man. And I heard him tell that story on multiple TV shows. So he was really bummed out about that for his whole life, I guess, which I can't blame him.
Jeez, I can imagine. I feel bad for the guy for sure. I think what we ended up getting with James Earl Jones, of course, is epic. I wouldn't want to go back and change that or anything. If I had a time machine, I probably wouldn't go back and make the case for Dave Prowse to be the voice, just because of how iconic that was coming from James Earl Jones, and we just we lived with it, and it's our reality. I wouldn't want to go back and change it, but still, I mean, I think he
it's just one of those way the cookie crumble things, I think.
Yeah.
Just
I think you got a raw deal with it.
Yeah. But that was a fun day. I remember we got an autograph or 2 or 3. I don't remember. I know I did get one of the card stocks autographed on a Darth Vader figure from the I don't know, whatever, 90s, the first 90s run they did with the new Star Wars toys. So
yeah,
that was pretty awesome. I still have it somewhere, but it's personalized to me, so it's not really worth anything to anybody else probably. But
yeah,
but that was really fun. And trying to think of another. Do we have any other Star Wars stories? Because there was no Star Wars movies out when we hung out. Like, when the Phantom Menace came out, I was in the Marines. I remember I saw that in. I think I saw it here, but we didn't see it together.
Right.
And then I went and saw it. I saw each one of them twice. The prequels. I saw one of them
in theaters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I saw each one of them once with like friends or whatever, and then I went and saw each one of them with my mom.
Okay.
Because, like I was like, oh, I grew up with Star Wars, so like it makes sense. So like me and my mom went and saw each one of them, and I couldn't really figure out what I didn't really like about them at the time. But over the course of like the years of watching them and watching some of the reviews and stuff, they've got problems. They're still cool. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to shit on them or like tell you they suck, but like, not you personally, of course, but like just generally speaking, I'm not trying to say they suck, but it's just, there's some problems with them that could have been, things could have been better, but you can say that for most things. So it's not like it's alone in its field of things could have been better. So, or things are silly. Like, you just have to kind of enjoy them for what they are. Like, they never were made to be like, Godfather-esque, works of art. They're just, they're fun stories to watch. So
yeah. I mean, they're compared to like the serial novels and things. Like they're pulp, like they're sci-fi space operas. They're what do you expect? They're pirate movies with spaceships and light swords, and they're
the hero saves the day.
Yeah. They're westerns in a sense. They follow so many common tropes, and they fit into these other genres so well. They're not, like you said, they're not meant to be high art. They're adventure movies. They're kid movies for the most part. Even the kids that refuse to grow up. I mean, it's for the immature set for the most part.
I don't know if it's immature. It's more just like the willing to like suspend your disbelief. Your willingness to have fun, I guess. Like, and like I said, there's stuff that, and like, we'll shit on the Dark Knight Rises plenty in this podcast, but like, the stuff in Star Wars or the prequels like wasn't nearly as like brain rattling as what was going on in The Dark Knight Rises, where I was like, why is this happening? What's this going on? Like, when he just said this, what's that mean? Like, I didn't have any of that really in these movies, where it was just kind of, I just watched them and kind of went along with them. And then later I'm like, well, that didn't really make sense. It was later on where I was thinking about it, where it was, things didn't quite add up. But, so it did its purpose. It entertained me for a couple hours, and then I moved on. So
I think that's the thing. I think that's what our problem is, as a fan base, or just as fans in general, is that we harp on things for so long, or we just dwell on it instead of just enjoying it in the moment for what it is. Like if we had revisited it years later, or whatever, or we could have just had this memory of it from a younger age, when we watched it in the theater, and enjoyed it for what it was. Just a distraction for a couple hours, an adventure, something fun. Instead of nitpicking it, picking it apart, trying to find every inconsistency with it, tearing down the actors for their performances.
I've said before, you can nitpick anything to death. Nothing is perfect. Like,
right.
You can find inconsistencies and like flaws in everything. So like, this new like critical thing that people have done on YouTube, where they just like, they hyper fixate on one thing and act like it's the worst mistake in the world, as if nothing like that's ever happened before. It's just kind of ridiculous. Like, if it's, if somebody shoots a guy and you see his head explode in the next scene, he's fine, and maybe you have a gripe. But most of the stuff isn't like that. It's more subjective, and like, well, I didn't like that, so this is why it sucks. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't suck. It's just you just didn't like that. You know what I mean? And that's fine. You don't have to like everything, but like, you got to understand that, like, you have perspective, I guess is what we're saying. So like, which you have to have some perspective on these movies. Like the original Star Wars trilogy isn't the greatest thing in the world either. You know what I mean? There's a lot of flaws and problems with it as well. And there's not as many because I feel like it was created under better circumstances, maybe like.
Yeah.
And like that just tends to be the case where it seems like you have more I don't want to say prolific, but more of a better shot of like greatness early on. It seems like because things are new, so people see something new and they're like, yeah. Whereas like this is Star Wars had been around for 20 years when Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah.
So
and
like
people had all this time to sort of like live in the lore and bask in it and kind of make their own sort of fan theories and and just hypothesize about things and to build up these ideas of these characters. They had these 3 movies and they build up their own sort of backstories, and they build up their own continuations of the stories, and there were novels, and there were and there were in some cases animated series and things that were coming on, and people were kind of rummaging through it and picking out the things that they liked and kind of dismissing the things that they didn't, and there were just decades of this before the prequels came out, and so they really didn't have much of a chance to succeed,
right,
because there was no way they were going to live up to everyone's expectation.
20 years worth of self-preferential expectation.
Right.
Because the things you think of in your head are like, well, that makes sense because I like it. Like not to go off on a tangent, but like the Breaking Bad situation where like every episode I'd be like, oh, how are they going to solve this? And I would come up with like ways that I would think they would solve it, and then I'd watch the episode, and whatever they came up with was a million times better than whatever I thought of. Like, you know what I mean? So like, because it was a week away, so like I didn't have 20 years to be like, oh, this and this and this. Like it was just like, oh, well, let me think of a few things, and it's like, bam, here it is. So it hit quicker, so it made it seem more, prolific. Or no, I use prolific again. But it made it seem more like epic, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's like no matter what, like if you're waiting 20 years to see something, it's not going to live up to whatever you've built it up to be in your head. So,
but I remember, and George Lucas was making the movies for a different generation. He wasn't making it for the original fans. He was trying to get a new generation of children interested in the story. So he was making it for the children of for the kids that were 8, 9, and 10 years old in 1999. He wasn't making it for those of us that were graduating high school, off in the Marines, off to college. He was making it for that younger generation. We forget that.
Right. Yeah, like its main secondary goal, I guess, other than to be a profitable movie, is to be a profitable toy line.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and adults do buy toys, and they buy plenty of them from what I've seen. But children usually buy toys. I mean, adults buy them for the kids, of course, but you know what I mean? Like the kids want them. Yeah. So like, and I think that's probably one of the things that I think missed with the Phantom Menace the most, in my opinion. Just critically speaking, and not like personally or like subjective or anything, but like just like an objective failure and it's not even like, I hate to make it seem like a failure, but the main character, quote unquote, being Anakin, being a kid, where George Lucas was like, oh, the kids are going to love seeing themselves on the screen as Anakin.
Right.
I heard him say something along those lines. That wasn't an exact quote, but like, that's the paraphrased thought, and like that's true. But like when we were kids, I specifically remember playing as Han Solo and Luke.
Right.
Like we'd play as Indiana Jones or like stuff like that. We didn't play as like, I can't even think of any kid. We didn't play as Dennis the Menace or like the Rascals or whatever. Like we played as adults. Yeah. So like
Short Round from Temple of Doom or something like that.
What's like, the kid's name? It was Short Round, right? Like
Short Round. Yeah. Kequay
Han or something.
Yeah.
We should probably cut that out. I was butchering his name.
we butchered his name.
Yeah, twice.
But anyway, Short Round was Short Round. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like
so nobody. It was different with.
It was different with the Goonies because the Goonies were all cool. You know, they were all kids and they were all cool and stuff. Yeah, I mean, so like you identified as a Goonie for sure. But like in these movies where the hero didn't have to be the kid. The kid could be the sidekick, and that was fine. But you didn't when you played as a kid, you didn't want to be the sidekick. You wanted to be the hero.
Right. Yeah. So like I think maybe he misjudged that a little bit, where he thought that people like because like when we were watching this, because just in case we didn't say this, I think we'll probably say it in the intro. But we watched this movie and like the edited version of it, and uh, I was asking how old Hayden Christensen was at this time. Not that they knew who he was even then. He may not have been an actor yet, but he probably would have been about the right age to go ahead and play Anakin.
Yeah.
Like he'd be what, maybe like 14,
right?
Which I think is fine. I think a 14-year-old Anakin is no real different thematically to an 8-year-old Anakin. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So like having that consistency of because like when you're 8, a 14-year-old looks like a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old or some shit like. So like that would have been the older kid, the older guy to emulate. Whereas like unless you're like 5, I don't think you'd want to be Anakin. Like I don't think you'd want to be an 8-year-old Anakin because he doesn't really seem all that powerful. He doesn't seem all that cool. Like he's kind of a dope. No offense to Jake Lloyd and his performance or anything, but like just the way the character's portrayed, like. He's just kind of a silly kid, like who has some potential. So like, I think that was a miscalculation on the Lucasfilm part of.
Now, do you think? I don't know this because I haven't researched it or anything. But do you think if Jake Lloyd had nailed the role as 8-year-old Anakin, that he would have been back in episode 2?
Possibly. Yeah, I think that's probably what they wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to get a kid that could grow into the part. And, there's behind the scenes footage where he's having trouble pronouncing names of things, and like it didn't look like it was an easy shoot for him. So like they probably were unfortunately unpleasant or unsatisfied with his casting by the end of the production. But again, it's an 8-year-old kid. So, but that's I think you can get the same effect because like people played. We're playing high schoolers when, like, in 90210, they were like 30. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're playing high schoolers. So, like, we get it. You know what I mean? Like, we're actors. We get that you're not really in space fighting people in, monster cars.
Well, they didn't need to cast. They didn't need to cast an 8-year-old, like you said. They could have cast a young teenager. I mean, who's to say if Hayden Christensen would have been better in that role as a 14-year-old Anakin Skywalker? He probably would have been. I mean. He's got some chops.
I think he was fantastic in the Ahsoka series. Like, I feel like the director really let him be himself the way he wanted to play the part there, whereas I don't think he got quite that chance in the prequel movies. You know what I mean? I think he was really, like, micromanaged from what I could tell by his performance.
The newer stuff that they've come out with, like his appearances in both the Kenobi series and the Ahsoka series, absolutely redeemed him.
Mm-hmm.
He's absolutely phenomenal in those.
Yeah. The scene with Obi-Wan and Anakin at the end of that series. Spoilers, if you haven't seen that, but where he's saying that Obi-Wan didn't kill Anakin, he did.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was great.
Powerful.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, with the whole prequel situation, they've kind of like pigeonholed themselves into the fates of these characters and stuff, so it's unfortunate like they couldn't have a more powerful ending to that situation because of the future, but that, that dialogue they had I thought was fantastic. I thought it was really good. Like, I was really happy that they got to redeem themselves because I thought they got to play the parts better. And it's not like they couldn't do it before, I just don't think they were allowed to before, and quote unquote allowed, because a lot of that is directing. It's not always the actor's fault. Sometimes the people are told how to act.
It's directing, it's writing, it's editing, and that's why I was kind of interested to see these fan edits because could they improve them? With just a little editing here and there, cutting a little bit of this, adding a little bit of this back in from the deleted scenes, tightening it up. focusing a little more on character development, trimming out just some of the inane dialogue, some of the, in particular with this one, there's quite a bit of the sort of the kiddie, goofy,
right, trying to
jokey
attract the
stuff
kid
that
thing
was taken
again.
out.
They're trying to get the kids to relate again, so they're like having them say silly things and stuff, just to be like, "Oh, look, we're having fun." It's like, well,
right.
We're watching a movie, guys. Like, just do your job.
So, there's definitely room for a fan edit to fail, like, tremendously. There are fans that may think that they're getting it right, and we wouldn't agree. That they have their own idea of how the movie should have been or how it should have gone, or their own idea of this character's development, and we're not going to agree with everything that another fan would do to a movie, for sure. I would argue, and maybe this is controversial, but maybe one of the worst fan edits ever done is when George Lucas went back into the original trilogy and remastered them.
Yeah, like the whole Greedo shooting first thing is just a notorious tragedy of fan editing, I think.
And I know, I mean, he's, he's the director, he's the original director. He certainly has the right to do that, to release a director's cut or a remastered cut or whatever. But, it felt, in a sense, like he was editing it not as the original storyteller, but as a fan, as a fan of his own work, in a sense.
Well, it's like this didn't age well thing, but it's like, well, that's still part of the character development of this character, I think.
Yeah.
To where he goes from, I will shoot first, to now I'm the general of the rebellion, or a general of the rebellion. I think that's a pretty big character arc. And, if Greedo shoots first and he has to defend himself, he's immediately like kind of almost a victim slash, hero in a way, because he shot the bad guy, I guess, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
It makes him seem a lot less dangerous to deal with when Luke and Obi-Wan deal with him,
Yeah. Yeah, the Greedo thing is definitely one of the biggest crimes in that remastering of A New Hope. Another one, I think, and it's unfortunate, but it was interesting to see Jabba in A New Hope. But the scene where they because they filmed that with an actor, and so to put it back in the movie and to put Jabba in there, they had to edit it so that it looked like Han was stepping on his tail as he was walking around him, and then Jabba makes like a face, like, oh.
Yeah,
and that was just goofy and ridiculous, and took me out of it completely.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and just shaking my head, and I watched the deleted scene on YouTube, or the scene from that, whatever, and I just immediately turned it off. I was like, nope, no thank you.
Yeah.
So, some of this, like, you can definitely miss on this, but, like, there's also a lot here to work with. So, like, that's also good, because you can take out, like, I'm looking at the list of the stuff here that they've cut and added or whatever, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, the scene, or the line where, here it says, remove several instances of the yippee line by various children. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
Trimmed Anakin and Padme's conversation. Like, a lot of the script in this wasn't very good dialogue. It was very generic, and, like, it just wasn't, like, I think, what is it, the second one, like, it's pretty hammered pretty hard for the sand line. Saying it's everywhere or whatever. Like, I think some of this would have benefited from a once-over from probably Carrie Fisher, honestly, because she did punch up stuff. So, like, having Carrie Fisher look at this probably would have helped a lot.
Yeah.
Because it just, the Jar Jar stuff was such a forced, like, slapstick, look at me, I'm being silly kind of humor that it just fell flat immediately. And they're like, Star Wars doesn't, like, it's not like it needs to be funny. Like, Harrison Ford was funny.
Yeah.
So that's one reason there's some funny stuff in the Star Wars movies, is because he was funny. Carrie Ford was fun, or Fisher was funny. So, she was able to be, like, bring some humor. Liam Neeson, not really a comic. I know he can do some funny stuff, but like, not really a comic. Ewan McGregor, not really a comic. Natalie Portman, same. So like, there's not really any funny people in it. Like, and that maybe that they could have casted some different people that were more humorous to play, but like it is what it is. So like, you work with what you have. So like, it doesn't have to be everything. Doesn't have to be funny.
Right.
There's some...
and you can certainly tell when it's forced. Like you said, Luke and Han and Leia and Chewie, and they were funny without having to. They never felt like they were trying to be funny. Right. They were just in their delivery and their expressions and their sort of reaction. They're playing off each other. Like, it was funny, but it was never like sticky, and like slapsticky and just
when their characters' chemistry. Right. Like, Luke was kind of like a farm boy, and Han was the tough guy, rebel guy, and Leia was the rich girl. So like, that's a kind of eclectic group of characters to play with anyway.
Right.
And with the Phantom Menace, like, you got a couple monks and a queen and a head of security and a kid and a rabbit. Right. So like, it's kind of a different group dynamic. You know what I mean? Like, and that's their fault. They wrote it, so they kind of wrote themselves into that corner. But that's part of the problem there. Like, you have to write an interesting group of people. Yeah. So, and I just feel like that's part of the problem there. Like, we talked about that on one of the other shows, that Qui-Gon Jinn being the Phantom Menace would have made this a much more interesting movie, because he seems more like the malevolent force. So like, if you'd have a benevolent force and a malevolent force, and they're both kind of like the Phantom Menace to each other. Like, Sidious is the Phantom Menace and Qui-Gon's the Phantom Menace to him, and blah blah blah. Like, I feel like that gives it a more like cohesive, like, antagonistic, protagonistic, like, situation, where now it's just like, it's just kind of a bunch of people, like, not really knowing what's going on, because as you watch the Phantom Menace as it is, the Emperor or Palpatine really doesn't really know. He has a plan, but he's not really like super in charge. He's pulling strings, but these Newt Gunray and the, what are they called? What's their race called?
Oh, you're talking about the Viceroy and right?
Like the Nemoidians, I think the Nemoidians are like they disobey him a few times. They are like disobey his orders or whatever. So like, he's not completely in charge of this either. So like, none of these people are really in charge of anything in this movie, which is kind of.
I think you could probably argue that even when things go wrong for Palpatine, that they go right. Like, he's like it's almost like the Thinker, and in the Marvel universe, like in the recent Captain America movie or whatever, where
the leader,
he play the leader, where he plays the odds and everything. Like, he has a sense of what's going to happen, what's most likely to happen, but he has a plan for every event, every possibility, every eventuality, and a way to twist it in his favor. And so I think even when things are going wrong or people are disobeying him, it feels like he's factored that in. I do get the sense from I think Ian McDiarmid is a fantastic actor, and I think I do get the menacing feeling from him. I believe that he is this force that's pulling the strings and has an end game in mind all the time. I get that. I think he's great at that. But I was very intrigued by your theory that you presented about Qui-Gon being the Phantom Menace, and I told you then that if I rewatched it, I would try to rewatch it in that lens, and I certainly did do that, and there's a lot to it that I really like. But I want to go back just real quickly and make a comment about comedy in these movies, because you and I talked about this, and I want to say that, to me, some of the best comedy in Star Wars comes from the pairings of C-3PO and R2-D2, Han Solo and Chewbacca, the characters that riff off each other, and one of them isn't even speaking anything intelligible, but the humor there and the connection there is just so incredible.
Right. Yeah, that's a great effect. Like we were talking about there during the movie, that Bob Newhart had a thing where he would talk into a telephone and you'd hear one side of the conversation, and that's kind of like a play on how this works. And they do it with Rocket and Groot and a few other characters here and there, but they do it.
Mm-hmm.
They've done it for a long time with these four characters that you just brought up. They've been at it for 40-something years now, or almost 50 years now at this point.
Right.
Yeah, Han and
And
Chewie.
it works,
Yeah.
and it's just that's just proof right there. That's the argument that humor and comedy in these movies doesn't have to be, blatant and in your face. Like, it can be subtle, and it can be gestures, and it can be, noises, like, or not
Beeps.
not the noises like you're getting from Jar Jar and some of the kids and stuff in the Phantom Menace, of course, but not like I'm not talking about fart noises. You don't have to go crude with it or whatever, but just like a robot and a Wookiee,
Yeah, like in the Marvel
can be
universe,
subtle.
they do it with Man-Thing and Werewolf by Night now. So like they do a couple horror characters like that, which is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, and that's the thing. There's different kinds of comedy. There's jokes, there's stand-up, there's situation, there's like. So I feel like a lot of the Star Wars humor comes from the situation. Like it's not necessary. I mean, I guess they're technically written jokes because it's a script or whatever. But like it's more of like, oh kid, we got to get out of here. You can't be doing that. Like there's a lot of like,
Right.
Stuff like inappropriate situation kind of things or whatever. Like not super inappropriate, but you know what I mean? Like just like wrong place, wrong time kind of stuff. And like the weird, let's try to make babies laugh stuff they were doing with Jar Jar for an adult to watch is just really, really tough. Like that's one reason that I wish that the Darth Jar Jar thing would be true. And they would have done it because it would have made that more relatable. Like, oh, he's trying to fuck with us. He's trying to make us all think he's an idiot. And like, he's doing it so blatantly in our face that we didn't even notice. That would have been something useful.
He's playing inept. He's playing a character as part of a deception. Yeah.
Yeah, but as it stands now, the way the story is written, he's a bumbling idiot they find and decide to take along with them for some reason, who then they decide is capable of filling in for a senator or a queen or something. I guess she's a senator at the time, probably. Like, so they decide that he's capable of filling in for a senator.
Yeah.
Even though his hometown kicked him out, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really weird. But if he was in on it with Palpatine from the get-go and was just like a plant that was just there to like spy on him and follow him around and like mislead him and gimp him up and stuff like that, that would have made much, much more sense than just the way it stands now. Like that's one reason that when people give these things crap, they don't even really realize why they're giving them crap probably, but it's stuff like that that just there's threads that your brain can't tie together because they're not completed. So
right,
and that's unfortunate, but it's there's still, like I said, there's still a lot that's fun there, and like I'm not trying to like destroy it or anything, but
yeah. So what's interesting about this fan edit? We'll get back to that a little bit. We'll talk about what we think are improvements over the original. Again, from our somewhat shaky knowledge of not having watched this movie in probably at least 20 years, but our recollections of it. And one of the things, obviously, they do, they don't eliminate Jar Jar.
Right.
Jar Jar still exists in this fan edit, but they minimize him to the point that he's a distraction from time to time. He's a comedic distraction. He pops up and does something kind of silly, and they've reduced the silliness quite a bit.
He feels a little bit more like Chewie in this, where he's a side character that's just there with the team or whatever. He's not really like, I don't like I said, the unnatural focus on him in the original edit just makes it seem like they had more in store for him. So like, but this makes it more in line with how he ends up, because there was no reason to spend as much time with him as we did in the first one if that's all he's going to be in the other two.
Absolutely, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And the way it's described in this edit is that he's become, instead of this kind of bumbling, this kind of traitorous, like he's failed as people. He's this big failure and everything. They cut a lot of that out, and they turn him into sort of just a an everyman sort of character, just a regular whatever, just a guy, that's on this planet, that is being attacked, and he kind of enlists or is enlisted in a way to help, and isn't extremely capable, and so he bumbles a little bit, and that's all it is, and that's really all he needed to be, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, like I said, he's just not that important to the story as it unfolds to spend anywhere near the amount of time that we spend with him. So,
Yeah,
and they even cut out the stuff where they talked about. Yeah, they cut out, I guess, the entire scene where they went to the underworld or underwater
yeah,
place, right? And that's where they were talking
right,
about how they distrusted Jar Jar and they hated him and he got like exiled. So like they don't even bring up that he got exiled in this edit, right?
right. No, they
No,
don't.
they just kind of like he just kind of bumps into him and then like they talk to the ruler or whatever and then nothing's really said about Jar Jar as far as that goes. Like
Right.
so,
I think there's a part at the end where, after Jar Jar's like fought in the battle, and the main guy, the boss nass, like the main Gungan guy, like throws his arm over him and says, that he did a good job, and it was before the battle, because he threw his arm over and he said he was promoting him to general, because the battle was about to start, and, and Jar Jar is kind of like, oh, general, and so yeah, they cut all that out, all that stuff, all that kind of conflict and everything, and it didn't really have a place.
no, no, and like it, the whole thing of the droids landing on the opposite side of the planet because they were near Naboo or whatever, and they like said they had the quickest way to go, or the droids were landing on the planet to go to the Theed, I guess, the capital city of Naboo, and they said the quick because they landed with the droid army, right?
Right.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. So like they landed with the droid army, and then Boss Nass in the original says the quickest way to get to the planet or to the other side or to the Theed is through the planet core, which means they're on the other side of the planet.
Right.
So they had to cut, like, if you leave all that in there, that means that the droid army, for some reason, landed on the opposite side of the planet from the city they were attacking on a planet where they don't use weapons, I guess, technically. So, like, like that just doesn't make sense in and of itself. So cutting that out, you cut out so much stuff that just does not make sense in this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
which, it's a cool scene, them going through the water and, fading the big fish thingy or whatever, but like, it's just not, there's no point. Like, it never matters ever again. Like, nobody dies. Like, if they lost somebody, like, oh, the fish killed one of us, like that would be like, oh man, you remember when they went through the planet core and somebody died? That was great. But like, other than that, like, it really means nothing, other than it's just
Right.
being a cool scene. So,
Yes. So Jar Jar ends up being more of like he's a bit of an ambassador, but for his people, like he makes the connection with the Jedi and the Queen, and with Amidala, and he's kind of a guide. At one point, like he leads them to the sacred place where the Gungans go when there's conflict, and that's where they make their peace, and the grand gesture of equalizing themselves with the Gungans, that ends up forming their alliance, and that worked without all that other kind of clutter and nonsense.
yeah, I thought overall this was a pretty, like I said, it was an interesting watch because it did move faster, and it was like I feel like I still got all the same amount of information that I needed. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I didn't feel like I was like just, what are we doing here? What does this mean? Like, what do we do? Like, why is this happening? So it was just, and the clunky
Yeah.
stuff that existed was not this edit's fault. It was just this what they had to work with. So like there's a lot of interconnected stuff in these, especially in these prequels movies where they jump back and forth between things a lot. So sometimes, like even Lucas himself stated, I think in the behind the scenes, like he couldn't do anything with the ending because everything was all connected.
Right.
So the ending got kind of clunky in this because of that. But this didn't feel like that. It felt like it was just, they took care of one thing, they took care of another thing, and then that was the end of the movie, which is probably how it should have worked. Like,
yeah, I didn't feel stilted to me. Like it didn't feel like truncated. It didn't feel like it was missing really a lot.
No, I mean, we know who these characters are, so some of them didn't get maybe intros, like Boss Nass maybe. Like,
right.
I don't remember if they said who he was, but we know who he is, so maybe that might be like. But again, it's just like, who the fuck cares who these people are? Like, like we spend 2 minutes with them, so like, is it really that big of a deal that they introduce themselves? But
right.
yeah, so like some of that might be like for somebody that's never seen this before, like you might be like, who's that guy or something like that. But for us, we've seen it, so we understand who they are, and they don't really need another intro. So like it just kind of like tightens things up for us. But
the other thing that they managed to do with this, and I think it's significant, is that they make Anakin Skywalker seem more capable. Like he's the chosen one, and in the original edit, they spent a lot of time with him sort of being a kind of a kid, just a kind of whiny, and
no control over anything really,
stumbling through things, just impulsive, and just probably the best example is at the end, where in the original cut, the Phantom Menace cut, he ends up in the fighter in the starship, and I think he ducks in there for protection or something, and like knocks the control, and the cover comes over the ship, and it kicks into some kind of autopilot or something, and he's just like not even really doing anything, and suddenly the ship is like shooting things, and he's just kind of like there, and they cut that so that it's more intentional. Like he jumps into the ship, to be in the battle. Like it's intentional, and he's got this skill as a flyer, as a pilot, and he knows how to
pilot a vessel basically.
Yeah. So he, and the other, and even in the pod race thing, they cut a lot of the like sort of the chatter about how, like they cut the scene out, the piece of dialogue out about him never winning a race, and they kind of play him up as more of a like he is skilled at this, like he's a kid, but he knows how to race a pod racer. He knows how to build a pod racer. Like he's
a natural acumen.
Yeah, he's got this sort of like, beyond his age, he's got this skill, this sort of unnatural like ability, and that's what Qui-Gon sees in him, and that's how he recognizes the strength of the Force in him. I mean, of course, he senses it, he feels it, but gone is the discussion of midi-chlorians. So there's no blood test. Like he doesn't test his blood and find out that it's like full of midi-chlorians or anything like that. All that's gone. It's more based on his observance of him as as this unnaturally like skilled young boy,
a gifted athlete of sorts.
Yeah. And that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, pod racing would be a high skill, quote unquote hobby job, whatever you want to call it. Like you'd have to have extremely fast reflexes and quick thinking, and like it would be a very, very difficult thing to do just for a regular like unskilled person. I feel like, especially like if he's doing it at 8 years old, that says a lot about his abilities.
Right, and there's things that happen in the race where he's sabotaged, and there's a lot of sort of cheating going on, sort of underhandedness going on from the other racers, Sebulba, this main competitor in particular, and he's able to overcome it in a way that seems like he has either some kind of angel on his side or like some kind of presence that's watching out for him, or just and I guess that the implication there is that it's the Force that that is his advantage in this situation.
Yeah, he just doesn't understand yet that's what it is. Like, he knows there's something going on, but he just doesn't understand that that's what's guiding him. So like Qui-Gon's like, I can tell you about that.
Right.
So like this kid is like a perfect Qui-Gon, Padawan. Like he already like listens to the Force, and he's not like, he wasn't taken as a small child and like made to do this. He just grew up doing this. So like I think that's all. Another thing that Qui-Gon, it would make sense that he would notice in him.
Yeah.
Like he'd see a little bit of himself in this kid. And let's see, there's one that I saw here that said that the battle sequences are restructured slightly to allow for Anakin to save the day rather than Padme. Originally, Anakin's actions were redundant after Padme captured the Viceroy, which, again, that's the kind of thing that they wrote themselves into in this, where, you want to have this moment and this moment and that moment, and you can't have all the moments, you know what I mean? You got to pick one sometimes.
Right.
Which, like I said, there's a line, I'll bring up Red Letter Media for the millionth time probably, like, they say, you didn't notice it, but your brain did. So like there's a lot of that in here where it's just like, oh, it flows better because this happens, and this happens. Where like when you're watching the other edit, the original edit or whatever, like your brain starts to question some things because like, well, why did this happen? And like, why is this happening? And I feel like there's a lot less of that in this, and it just kind of flows better. So.
Yeah. And that scene you're talking about too, like because it happens after like basically the battle's won, when she captures the Viceroy. Like Anakin has blown up the droid ship, the brain that's controlling the droids. Like the battle's basically won, and the Viceroy and his lackey have all but given up at that point, and she kind of emerges and is like, it's over, and it really is at that point, and Anakin played a part in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned something too that in this that maybe Obi-Wan kind of resented Qui-Gon for being short with him and not trusting him or like praising him and all that kind of stuff, and like that could be another reason too. Like that would have been another good reason for Obi-Wan to train Anakin, because he sees a little bit of himself of Qui-Gon in him.
Yeah,
like, oh well, I'll let my resentfulness towards my master got him killed, so like maybe I'll make it up to him by training this kid, because he wanted to train this kid because he saw something to himself in him. So like that would also bring a little bit better motivation, I think, for that as well, because like on any other account, like they're all telling him what a cancer he is, and it's like, well, if you're a Jedi, why don't you listen to the people telling you what
Yeah.
So like there's so much inconsistency with it, like just some of the characters and stuff like that this just clears up, because it just takes out the contradictoriness of it. Yeah. Contradictory nature of some of the stuff.
Another piece here is it says, obviously, and it tracks, is that the edit here de-emphasizes Qui-Gon's sort of heavy-handedness with Obi-Wan in terms of demanding or insisting guilt tripping that him into training, and Obi-Wan into taking on Anakin as his Padawan, as his apprentice, and it makes it more of a decision that Obi-Wan makes for himself. There's still a line in there, when Qui-Gon is dying, where he says train him. He tells him he is the chosen one. He says train him, but it's not as forceful. And yeah, I did think that Qui-Gon was kind of an ass to Obi-Wan through that whole movie. If you really watch it, he talks a lot about how there's nothing else I can teach this guy. He can be on his own. Like, he's so dismissive of him. And we talked about how it just didn't seem like Obi-Wan did a whole lot to try to keep Qui-Gon alive at the end, and there could be some guilt going on there. In that scene with Darth Maul there, when Qui-Gon is stuck through with the lightsaber, that's not a fatal blow. And almost any other Star Wars content that we've gotten since that movie, and it's just kind of funny, And in that scene, you see Darth Maul like cut in half, like falling into the abyss, and we know later that, spoiler, he survives. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon,
we better burn him.
Flesh wound is like dead, and there's nothing that can be done. And they throw him on the pyre.
Yeah. Just to make sure,
Yeah.
Like, well, we can't use this guy anymore. They're probably all like, fuck this guy, man. He didn't listen to anything anybody says. We're not going to save him. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, though, that, like, literally people get ran through with lightsabers all the time now, and it's not a problem at all. And Qui-Gon gets ran through, and he lays there for a long time. Like, he lays there long enough for Obi-Wan to fight the next fight. And then he's still there. Like, nobody came in to help. No, like, they're just in this building by themselves. Nobody has a camera. Like, oh, this Jedi's down. Send in a medical droid or, nothing. Just, he just dies. And, and like I said, Darth Maul literally gets cut in half and falls down what looks to be a bottomless pit.
Right.
And somehow he's
there had to be one of those backed up baths or whatever somewhere not too far. They were in a palace.
Yeah, like there has to be some, like they were in the palace, like the Queen's palace.
Yeah.
And they're
so that like bacta thing that that they put like
Boba Fett
Anakin in after he's like cut in half and burning in a volcano. Like they put him in that. He's able to like survive and you see the same thing with Boba Fett crawling out of the Sarlacc pit and all these people that have like been through so much more. Han being frozen in carbonite for who knows how long. All these people that survive these things, and Qui-Gon is just tossed aside so quickly.
Well, literally, two people get jabbed through the chest with lightsabers and live in the Obi-Wan show that happens later on. So,
yeah, that's right.
There's another one that I don't remember. I think it may have been in the Acolyte or something. Somebody else gets stabbed through the chest and lives. I can't remember which one it was now.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Ahsoka. I can't remember, but. Yeah, so like that clearly shouldn't have been a death blow. Like, I mean, Han Solo, spoiler alert, got stabbed in the chest and died. So like, it's kind of like I guess it just matters what the story wants as to whether you live or die from that or not.
Yeah,
right. I guess unless you see him burn you or burn him in a fire, you just have to assume they could still be alive.
True.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't see Han Solo burned in a pyre after he fell from the walkway, the thing or whatever. Like he was stabbed by his son and left for dead.
Well, if he comes back, he's like, nobody ever really dies.
He could come back. He could come back.
Yeah.
We didn't see if there was no finality after that.
Nobody burned his
Star
body.
Wars terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Han Solo not dead. # free Han Solo.
Bring him back. Bring him back. Yeah.
He was the Red Hulk. Let him be Han Solo, for God's sakes.
We haven't seen enough of Harrison Ford in that role. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I know.
Bring back Han Solo.
What a shame they didn't get all three of them together before they did that. They should have done it in the first movie. Like they had a reason to get all three of them together for one scene at least.
Oh, they should have. But that was such a missed opportunity. They needed to there needed to be more interaction. We deserved it as fans to have something where we had Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie and R2 and C-3PO in the same room just for one scene. We should have had that.
The Mandalorian scene where we get to see Luke do his thing, I just made me feel sad because we never really got to see Jedi Knight Luke, the confident, this is who I am, Jedi Knight Luke in action ever, except for that one scene in the Mandalorian, really, I remember seeing that when, when it was happening.
I had such chills from that.
I just remember watching it, and I was like, if this isn't Luke Skywalker, I'll never watch Star Wars ever again. And then he took his hood off, and I was like, okay, cool, I can still watch Star Wars because like there's no way this isn't Luke.
That was so good. And you know what? Shit on the CGI and all that stuff all you want, but like that was just so good.
I still think they should have Sebastian Stan play Luke now. Like, I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
They look almost exactly alike, so.
Yeah, it could work out.
Yeah, like just let's see Luke do his thing. Like that's who we all like. Let's they keep going back to the Skywalkers. Like let's see Luke Skywalker do his thing. Like recast him.
I don't know. I think we're past the Skywalker saga now. As much as I enjoyed it and liked it, I like those stories, but they're telling some really great, deeper stories about some other characters and other areas of the galaxy right now with some of these series and things they're doing, and I'm here for that. I think it really is just expanding the universe in so many great ways. I love the new Star Wars content, the new stories that are being told, and I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people think that Disney ruined Star Wars and everything, and I'm not in that camp. I think some of the stuff they're putting out now is just the best stuff we've ever gotten in Star Wars.
Disney ruined it at all. Like, they didn't make the prequels, so like I can't blame them for the prequels. Like, the prequels have more problems than almost anything Disney's come out with. Like, I'm not a big fan of the Han Solo movie just because there's some really weird choices in it. As far as the movie itself, it's fine, but like when there's like, hey, you're by yourself, you should be solo. It's like, what? Like, that's just not his name?
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
There's some weird stuff going on for sure.
Yeah. So, like, other than that kind of stuff, but, again, everybody was fine in the movie. They thought, Lando Calrissian or Donald Glover was good as Lando. Like, there's some good stuff in those movies. It's just, they just decided to make some weird choices. So.
Yeah, there were a few weird things for sure. I overall liked it. I thought that, I didn't think I would either, because I didn't think I was ready to see anyone but Harrison Ford in that role. But for what it was, I liked I thought that they got the chemistry between Chewie and Han down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the thing you had to do to make that movie work in any way at all.
Yeah. Was
to get that chemistry right. And I think they did that. They missed on a few other things for sure. But just that they got that right, did such wonders for that story,
mm-hmm.
I think. And I was in for that. I wanted to see an early Han and Chewie story, early Han and Chewie adventure, how they met. I liked that.
Yeah, like
and I think that movie. I think one of the things it suffered from, unfortunately, was the change in they sort of changed directions after not an insignificant amount of filming had already been done. They had directors in place for that, and then Ron Howard came in to basically save it because it was being treated with too much of a comedic hand.
Right. Yeah.
The directors for that, I'm trying to think of their names, but the directors for that were the ones that did the Lego movie.
Isn't it Phil and Chris Lloyd?
Yes, that's right.
Or Lord? Is it Lord?
Lord, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to be watching the prequels this month, the fan edit of the prequels. So we'll watch this one this week, and then Attack of the Clones next week, and Revenge of the Sith the week after that, and then I think we'll finish the month of May, the Star Wars month of May, up with Andor season 2. It should be over by the time the month is over, so we'll watch all that up and talk about that the last week and see what we think of that, because I've heard very, very good things about season 2, so kind of excited to see what it's like.
We might just have to keep rolling with this. We might not do it all. We may take a little break or something like that, but we may end up back back with A New Hope and Empire and Jedi and maybe even the sequels after that. There's a lot of Star Wars content to get through, and for the most part, we're pretty much fans of the lore of the saga, and so we'll revisit it from time to time. I know when we talked about it the first time, I had mentioned that I had that on the poster. It said Star Wars, and it didn't really on my scratch-off poster.
Right, it didn't tell you which one in particular.
Working my way through it, and it didn't really identify which one. And so I said it's either just the first one or it's all of them. And you were like, oh, I couldn't imagine rewatching all of them. But we might do that.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
We'll be at this for a while probably, so that'll give us something to do. There's a podcast I listen to called Bananas for Bonanza, where they're going to watch every episode of Bonanza and talk about it. And there's like 400 and something of them.
Yeah, we don't want this podcast to be all about Star Wars, though. So maybe what we do is we do the prequels this May. Maybe next May we do 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
And then the May after that we do 7, 8, 9.
Yeah, and there'll probably be a new show that we can talk about during each May. So like we won't plan the show yet. Or the project. There might be a movie or something too. So we'll save the 4th week of May for something. Yeah, something surprising or random or something for Star Wars.
Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and say that overall, I think that the fan edit was an improvement. I think you can find it online. If you search for the fan editor, it's HAL 9000. It's Star Wars Episode 1, Cloak of Deception. It's retitled. The version we watched was the 8th version of the fan edit. But you can search around. You can find it to download online and check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, you should. It's if you've never seen it before and you enjoy Star Wars at all, it's definitely worth checking out. Because it's not anything that wasn't there already. So.
And the other thing is, it does take a little bit off the runtime. So I think it ends up being something like 20 to 30 minutes shorter than The Phantom Menace.
Yeah, and if you know somebody that's never seen Star Wars before and they'd want to watch it just to see their reaction, let us know what that's like, because I'd be interested to hear what they think.
Hey, ETAers, thanks for listening. Follow us on Instagram at Every.Thing.After and let us know, what's your ETA? If you have a knee-jerk reaction or just like to nerd out to movies, music, shows, or games, drop us a line. We'd love to have you on the show. Until next time.